Hello there, welcome back to another set of shows. Today I'm going to talk about a bunch of films. This will not be the most highly intellectual set of videos this week. We're still in the middle of summer. I've been watching blockbusters, I've been watching different kind of films. So not exactly a strain, but the most intellectual ones I've watched still aren't that intellectual. They're more like films that try to be something and fail rather than real achievements. It's just been the week I've had. So there you go. So I'm going to start with the big blockbuster of the week, which is Mission Impossible. So I'll do this one and I'll stop and I'll do some more videos over the next short amount of time. So Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 is part 1 of 2. And it's another in the series of the Mission Impossible movies. We know what they are now. They started off with Brian De Palma's Mission Impossible, which he took on for a hit because he thought that it's a Tom Cruise film. He'd had a few bombs. He wanted to get a hit, so he gave him other films financed that he wanted to do. So he made Mission Impossible. And he did such a good job, the series is going for another 20 years. Now, you could say, okay, he just did the first one. What's the big deal? But the big deal is that he actually set up the template for the rest of the film. The rest of the films kind of went back to the Palmer idea of a man in the run, hated by his own people, has always been chased both by enemies and his own group, having like break-in sequences, having like globe trotting, which was a Bond thing, but this is done much more. It was less gratuitous. It's much more this is all tied to the plot, and the plot takes place all over the world, and there's lots of interest all over the world. And it just kind of redefined how you could do this kind of thing for an American audience that pretty much went with this with Bourne films after this. They followed a lot of the same routes, but did more shaky cam. But they were obviously influenced by Mission Impossible. Obviously there was a sequel, Mission Impossible 2, John Woo, one of his worst films. Then there was the boring Part 3, and then the series kicked into gear Part 4, when they kind of went back to the De Palma thing of he's on the run, he's having to figure stuff out as he goes. There's break-in scenes. They just went back to what was working and said, okay, that works. Let's use it. And they actually brought back Paul Hirsch, who was the editor of the first film, as well, to edit this film. And then at that point, Christopher McQuarrie was brought on as one of the writers of that film later in the process to rewrite certain things. And he soon became a director and he took over the series. And since then, we've had Rogue Nation and Fallout, both terrific films in this kind of genre. And I think it's just a case of the people involved understood that the template of the first one, well, you could do things with it. It was actually pretty solid, you know. It's a spy movie. Have him on the run from his own people because they don't know what his organization really does. And he could be going rogue at any time. And there's this sense of there's dangers everywhere. And it just be a case of, okay, that works. Let's just keep doing this. And people like as long as you have a reason every time for why he's on the run from his own people. And usually it's a case of they don't understand the mission, the job, and the mission. And they define the idea of the Mission Impossible was it's jobs where you're undercover a lot of the time and you have to do some very strange things on the run. So it took a lot of the template from like that first film, but it also took a lot of the template when Corey came on from Raiders of the Lost Ark, which was the joke is, do you have any plan? No, I'm doing this as I go. I'm working as I go. And that's what the films became, that idea of the first two Indiana Jones films, but they're trying to figure stuff out as they go. It's something that those films lost over time, but this series kind of took it up. It's like, okay, here's a setup, and let's just improvise from that. And again, because De Palma and Spielberg were the people who were, and Lucas were the people who were influenced by, they were influenced by other directors from the 40s who played with those templates as well. So it's a continuation of things like the Hitchcockian Man the Run, the Fritz Langian type of paranoia of the kind of who knows what chasing down your hero. I mean, they're taking stuff from the perspective of old style cinema, which came from the pulps, back to the vampires and things. I mean, it's nothing new, but it depends on how it's done. This is a template that a lot of people use, but most of them use it badly because it's something that has to be done with a certain type of style. And one of the big tricks is if you want to be political or satirical, you have to do it on the run. You have to keep moving. You always have to keep moving. And this series understands that now. I mean, one of the big problems with 2 and 3 was they kept on stopping. It was like, with this one mission, we stop and we recharge and we stop again. Always felt it was stop, start, those films. And from 4 onwards, it was always like, looking back to the first one, it's always moving. There's always information coming up, which is one of the big things the first film was. Even when they stopped, there was always information that was coming through those scenes that kept you going to the next scene. And they kind of brought that back. Well, in the 2 and 3, they just seemed a case of there was information that wasn't very interesting, and it just felt the films were stalling a lot. But the 4th film onwards, it just seemed like, oh, they went back to this formula. So that's why I went all the way back to the first film for this one. Also because the film itself goes all the way back to the first film a lot. Now, it's one of those things. One of the reasons the first film is referenced a lot in these films, in a sense, is because it's like almost the people like Cruise and others know that was a template, and there was so much good there that you could keep on using, and they keep bringing characters back. They keep bringing the certain structure back. It's almost like they understand that there's more to be mined from it. So this one actually goes the whole hog and brings back the kind of, not the villain, but one of the authority figures in the first one, Kitteridge. And you also have Max, Miss Reggae's daughter. But this girl who played Max, her character, her daughter, was interesting in the last film, is in this one. Ring Rames was from the first one. He's been through them all. And there's a sense of it is coming back to where the Cruise character was in the first one and where he is now. And a sense of a lot of time has passed, but nothing's really changed. And there's just this sense of they're going back to the roots really for this film. And there is a sense of the first action scene set in an airport feels very De Palma-ish. You know, it's not like a homage to him in any way, but it's playful in the way that a De Palma suspense scene is. It's like they're using like diversion tactics a lot, and they're using just a little bit of humor of what you expect in a film, and it feels very De Palma in a nice way. And then they go and do their own thing with the rest of the films. But there's also stuff like the last sequence takes place in a train, just like the first one. The middle sequences are pretty much trying to figure out what they're going to do, and they moving back and forth between friends, and there's jokes about sleight of hands, which came from the first one. It just feels like the first one is haunting this film quite a bit. And that's quite good because it gives it just a structure. But the film is not slavishly tied to the first one. It just knows that first one was taken from earlier examples of how you do these kind of films. It's like, welcome back there. And that's what like, McQuarrie really brought. It's even back to like, what's the tradition of these films, and what do you try and subvert, and what do you keep to keep going in these films and keep the films going. So I mean, in Rogue Nation, you got a massive Hitchcockian homage in the theater, which is which again had bits of De Palma in it because De Palma took from Hitchcock and subverted it on his own. But also there was lots of things that was very Hitchcock there. You know, in the fifth one, you had a central protagonist that was not who he seemed, that Cruise's character was going against a lot, with Henry Cavill, which was very similar to what John Voight played in the first film. And again, it goes back to this 70s feeling of paranoia that people who you see as your authority figures could be corrupt. So I'm not just saying going back to the first one, it's going back to what influenced the first film, the kind of thing that they took into the first film that came from the 70s paranoia films. So there's a lot of stuff going into this that is from the past, but it is put together for a blockbuster audience. So, in some ways, it's good that it references the past. In other ways, you think, well, it is a ride for a film more than something that is really examining anything. Because it is more of an entertainment film than anything else. It really is. And that's what the success is, and that's also kind of where it might have less staying power. Because it is taking on these ideas, but doesn't really get any ideas. They're all set up for the next action scene. And that's what De Palma did a little bit. He was playing around with that as well, because he was wanting to hit, so he could not be as subversive as he usually was in these films. He had to be a bit more gung-ho than he usually was, really. But that created that weird tension where you need ideas feeding into this film, but you also can't examine them too much. And as the films went on, they've created this sort of formula that really works for it. There's a sense of, this is a sense of a spy world, but it's a fictional spy world where wonderful stuff happens and ridiculous things happen. And it's always set up for crazy stunts that are the hallmark of silent cinema. You know, and I'm obviously so influenced by Buster Keaton, it's insane. There's just so much of this. Is like what Cruise is doing on these stunts is very much influenced by those crazy stunts Buster Keaton used to do. So it all goes all the way back through cinema, and that's the joy of the film. And in this film, one of the criticisms we've had, and there's not been many criticisms in this film, but most of the criticisms that have come its way is about the plot, because there's not that. The plot really is stringing together things to the next action scene, and most of the information taking place in the action. And it's almost like going where Argento was going by the late 70s with Suspiria and Inferno, where they're just the light points to the big set pieces they want to do. But unlike a lot of modern blockbusters who have plots that are doing the same thing, these ones have good set pieces, and they also have a sense of humor, and the plot itself, while it's functional for these developments to get the plot from A to B to the next action scene, it still works really well. It's simple, it's effective, and they keep the point. So it's a kind of interesting thing where they have stripped out so much of the melodrama, and they are very spare with emotions at times, because the spies are trying to get from A to B, and things happen and people react in a way that's very kind of underplayed in spy mode. But it really works because the film itself uses the music and the emotions of the film. So you're always feeling what they're feeling. You just don't need them to emote on a big speech all the time. It's like the Cruise running through a street to save someone is more important than having a dialogue scene about why he's doing it. It's like, the context, the setup, and then the emotion of them doing it is the thing of the film. Same with the early sequences, it's like it's not what he's chasing, it's like the fact that he's having a flirtatious relationship with the new character played by Hayley Atwell in this airport where everything's going wrong is the point of the scene, not actually what they're chasing. What they're chasing is important to keep you interested, but it's like, how do you take this and be playful with it? And that's the point of the scene. The chase scene through Rome, which is much better than one than Fast X, it's playful as hell, but it's also keeps the point, and there's obviously references to the Italian Job in it, but it's very playful and very enjoyable. And it really is. These people have been watching Fury Road in the sense of they're not going to go as big as an operatic Fury Road. There's less depth to it. Fury Road had more depth because there was the apocalypse and things. This one is trying to prevent apocalypse, but it still has that sense of how we do the things in the action beats is tell you so much about what's going on. It's the same way that happened with the earlier Indiana Jones films. Is like you got the exposition scenes, but how they did certain action scenes actually told you so much of the character. And there's the playfulness keeps on going all the way to the end with the train sequence, which the thing is, the first Mission Impossible film, the train sequence had playfulness too to it, and this one actually has a scene that references the first one. Is like we're doing this gag again because, yeah, of course we're going to do this again. We're on a train, we're going to do this thing again. And we expect you to have known and seen the first film and know, yep, we're doing it again. But it allows for the simplicity of actually paring everything down. Because we realise that the first film, the first recorded Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, in some ways one of the strongest of the series, was a bit too complicated at times. And by this point, he's pared it down to what you need to get to the next bit of the story. Like, he'd managed to pare it down really well with Fallout, but this one, he's pared it down even more. So each movie, even though it follows the same template of your lead character is after someone, no one believes it exists, or no one trusts him to do his thing. So he could be on the run from his own people. People might be lying about him. It takes that template and then adjusts it to be different each time. Even though you're telling basically the same joke, but telling it a different way each time. And it's like a case of, this is what craftsmanship is. This is like, it's not craftsmanship towards doing a great artistic achievement of like Terrence Malick. This is craftsmanship of taking what everyone wants to see and actually delivering it in a package that really works. You know, it's not meant to be the deepest film. It's meant to be the film that's you're going to watch every couple of years because you're just going to enjoy it, because there's jokes throughout it without it being overly strained or packed full of jokes just for the sake of it. There's humour, but a lot of the humour's in the reaction to things and little looks you get in the film and things like that. The effects really work. They're all very practical. There's a few CGI effects that are a bit off at the end, but nothing that really phases you out. It's one of those films. It's a part one of a story. You think, I really want to see part two now, because part one actually has an ending. It's a definite ending. There's not like a cliffhanger ending. It's like we have an ending, but also has left threads open to pursue for the second film, that you don't have to suddenly have like 40 minutes of a prelude to the next film to get you going. It's like, no, this film set up the second film while doing its one thing, and that's what the film seems to be. The aim of it is just keep moving and setting things up for you even knowing they're setting things up. It's like, it's just information, more information, more information. And the reason it worked is it's just so well crafted, and they've worked it all out. And that's a series where they work at the stunts well in advance and keep working at them, so they've got the right camera placements, the right lenses, everything's safe, and they just pare it down and pare it down. And they've been paring it down a lot since during the COVID thing, and that's the reason why the film has a massive budget, is because they were shooting during COVID. They started filming and COVID shut them down twice. So the budget is the only problem with making money from this film for the studio is that they cost so much because of COVID. But it's exactly the kind of film if you want to be a blockbuster, this kind of thing you should study, is like, this is how you do it. Not they try and copy the story or anything. It's much more like, watch their way of giving you information. There's the one scene early on where it's like, we have to give you the information here, because basically we give it here while you're still settling in. We don't have to the rest of the movie. We can just keep on adding to it and taking things away, but we don't have to do it. So people complain about the scene early on. It was like, it's before even the credits come, and you've got the information you need, and you don't have to sit through this ever again in the movie, or probably this next movie either. It's like, well, that's fine. It's basically what is the Lost Ark scene for this one. And it's just a great example of how do you structure a action film. How do you make it an adventure that's actually worth following without actually having to be expansive? It's also a case of how you support an actor. So they're in, they do the part, then they leave. I mean, there's some actors who are in this film, it's like, they were probably only on set for like a month or something, then they moved on to something else. Like, there's some actors that you're pretty sure weren't there for that long. And there's other ones that are probably there forever. But they use them all well. They know exactly what they need them for, and it all works really well. Now, I still prefer the first film as my favourite of the series because I'm a big De Palma fan. But pretty much from Ghost Protocol onwards, all the Mission Impossible films have all been really well done, you know, action films. But this one is the most streamlined. This is like the purest you can probably get it. I mean, I can't see them going much further than this or the next film, unless of us they go in a completely different direction. Because it's almost like we're going to get this right. We're going to perfect this time round, and then we're done. It just seems like an end of the road type of film. But who knows? I might be wrong. But it is really enjoyable. But it's really enjoyable in how it's constructed as a film, taking the influences it has and put it into something that's just this adventure story that keeps on moving. And how they just take something, we understand this formula. That's the way Westerns used to work as a case of you understand the formula, so do we. And then we're going to tweak it and we're going to have some fun with it. And we're going to be playful without being like rubbing in your face or playing with you. It's just that kind of film. It's like, we know you've seen these films before. We know you've seen this film with this character on the run before, but we're going to do it in a different way. And we're going to put them in different situations. We're going to make life miserable for them in different ways this time. And it just works. So it's definitely worth talking about. You probably notice I don't talk about the plot very much. The plot's there and it works, but it's only half a plot so far, so it's kind of hard to decipher what the actual overall plot is, how successful that is. But the general situation going from location to location, from threat to threat, to put together one object that could be a threat to the other thing in the second film. That's all you need. It's like, this is the goal for this film, is to get this object. That's all it needs to be. And how does people come and go in this thing? And all the actors seem to be having a lot of fun. Everyone seems to be enjoying themselves. Everyone gets a moment. And, you know, the villains are fine for what they need to be. And there's a main mega villain for the second film. They're still they're a threat for what they need to be, but they don't like, over dominate the film in a way that Jason Momoa in Fast X pretty much dominated the film in a sense of it meant that everyone else kind of seemed to be like in the background. That's why no, the villain's there. He does what he needs to do, but everyone else has a space too, and it's more satisfying that way. So go see the film. It's really enjoyable. You know, if you like a film that understands its traditions and knows how to play with them, this could be up your street. It really is enjoyable, and you don't have to think that much about it. You just have to follow what they're telling you. It's not trying to confuse you. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll be back soon with some more. That's me for now. Bye.